In the vast, unforgiving void, Commander Ethan Caldwell faces a forbidden love with the enigmatic Velari envoy, Sylvara. Aboard the battered Odyssey, as pirate warlord Drakar hunts them through a crimson nebula, their bond could save or doom them all. Will love defy the stars? Read on to find out. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more captivating stories and to inspire more epic content. The Odyssey floated through the void, its aging hull a relic of human engineering, patched, reinforced, and constantly on the brink of failure. The stars outside were distant, uncaring, scattered like tiny diamonds across the vast black canvas of space. In the observation lounge, Ethan Caldwell, commander of the Earth Reconnaissance League starship, stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the distant blue dot that was Earth. At 35, Ethan had already seen too much. His first crew, now lost to the treacherous depths of space, haunted him every time he stared at that tiny, fragile planet. And yet, he couldn't shake the need for connection. His heart ached for something, anything, to pull him from the cold isolation. He buried the desire under layers of sarcasm and humor, something he wore like armor. Behind him, Sylvara stood quietly, her skin glowing with an ethereal opalescence, her eyes shifting through shades of violet and silver. The Velari envoy was an enigma, a being from a race that could manipulate emotions with nothing but a glance. To Ethan, she was an allure he couldn't fully understand, too beautiful, too distant, a perfect mystery. Yet in the quiet hum of the Odyssey, she felt real. For a fleeting moment, Ethan allowed himself to be vulnerable. He turned to face her, his words a whisper in the vastness. "You look beautiful today." Sylvara froze. Her eyes flared violet, a vivid pulse of shock flashing across her features. To her, those words were far more than a compliment. They were a sacred vow, one forbidden, one that could destroy everything. Before Ethan could understand the gravity of his mistake, Sylvara spun on her heel, her footsteps echoing down the corridor as she fled. Ethan stood there, his heart pounding, his thoughts tangled in confusion. What just happened? His mind raced, but his instincts told him one thing: I've messed up. Sylvara paced in her quarters, her every step filled with an emotion she couldn't control. The walls of the room shimmered with a soft light from the stars outside, but inside, her mind was a storm. Ethan's words echoed in her head. "You look beautiful today," to humans. It might have been a simple compliment. To her, a Velari envoy, it was a sacred vow, a declaration of eternal devotion. It wasn't just an acknowledgement of beauty. It was a bond that could never be broken, a bond forbidden by her people. Her fingers pressed against her temple, trying to stem the flood of emotions. "I shouldn't feel this. I shouldn't want this." She closed her eyes, trying to calm the rush of violet waves that swept through her. It wasn't just that she was drawn to Ethan. It was that he had unwittingly crossed a line. The Velari were forbidden from forming emotional bonds with outsiders. It was a law, unbreakable and sacred. Yet, here she was, torn between duty and the undeniable pull of her heart. Outside her quarters, the hum of the ship was a distant reminder that life went on. But for Sylvara, nothing felt the same. She had to make a choice. Her role on this mission was clear: observe and report. Yet, with each passing day, the human commander became more than just a subject of study. He was someone who saw her, not the envoy, not the ambassador, but the person beneath it all. That scared her. Back in the observation lounge, Ethan stood frozen, replaying the brief interaction in his mind. What did I do wrong? He wasn't sure, but something about the way she ran from him felt like more than just a misunderstanding. His heart hammered in his chest, but he didn't know what to do. "She's a mystery I can't solve, and now I've probably destroyed any chance of getting close." The sudden screech of alarms shattered the uneasy silence aboard the Odyssey. The ship jerked, the artificial gravity momentarily sputtering as the crew scrambled into action. Ethan Caldwell's heart leapt into his throat. His mind, still reeling from the moment with Sylvara, snapped into commander mode. No time for distractions. Not now. Captain Drakar's fleet is on our tail. Riley's voice crackled through the comms. His usual Levitai gone? We're being targeted. Ethan's hands flew over the control panel. All hands, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Battle stations, now. He barked, the urgency clear in his tone. Sylvara stood at the helm, her presence still weighing HFY on Ethan. But there was no time for thoughts of her now. Drakar's pirate armada, 3 warships, led by the menacing Iron Fang, was a threat unlike any the crew had faced. Drakar was a pirate warlord, a relentless hunter of anything valuable in deep space. And now, he had set his sights on the Odyssey. Riley, take us into the nebula, Ethan commanded. We can lose them in the mist. The ship bucked under enemy fire, the shields flaring a brilliant blue. Shields holding its 65 from Mira reported from the engineering bay, her voice steady but laced with tension. The Odyssey had seen better days, but they couldn't afford to break now. Ethan's eyes shot to Sylvara. Her hands moved with unnatural precision across the controls, her eyes flicking between readings, each movement precise. She wasn't just a scientist. She was a conduit between the ship and the cosmos. Her voice was steady but strained. We need to align the ship's frequency with the nebula's pulse. The vibrations, if we sync with them, we can slip past them undetected. Ethan nodded sharply. Do it. As the Odyssey veered toward the nebula, the pirate ships closed in, their cannons charging with deadly intent. A plasma bolt shot past, grazing the starboard hull. Sparks flew. Riley cursed, slamming his hands against the controls to steady the ship. Get us into the nebula. Ethan's command was a demand, not a plea. In that moment, as the Iron Fang loomed closer, it became clear they would have to rely on each other, on Sylvara, on trust. And there was no room for error. The Odyssey shot into the nebula, the crimson cloud swallowing them whole. Outside, Drakar's ships closed in. But inside the Odyssey, the crew was focused. The danger was real, and they were running out of time. The Odyssey trembled as it entered the nebula, the crimson mist outside swirling like a storm waiting to devour them. The ship's engines whined in protest, their aged systems struggling to maintain control. Inside the control room, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Ethan stood at the helm, eyes narrowed as he watched the incoming pirate ships on the radar, their blips closing in with lethal intent. Evasive maneuvers are failing, Riley reported, his voice tight. We're too slow. They've got us cornered. Ethan's mind raced. They had only one option left. Drift. Cut the engines, he ordered, his voice firm. Drift. Let's see if we can lose them in the mists. Riley's head snapped toward him, incredulity flashing in his eyes. Are you out of your mind? We'll be sitting ducks. Do it, Ethan snapped, his voice hard. Sylvara, can you guide us through this? Sylvara's eyes flicked toward him, her expression unreadable. She had been quiet up until now, the pressure of the moment evidently weighing on her. Her gaze locked onto Ethan's, and for a brief second, the room seemed to hold its breath. I can, she said softly, her voice steady but tinged with something else, something deeper. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls, aligning the ship with the pulsating frequencies of the nebula. The vibration in the air shifted, the Odyssey's engines falling silent as they cut off all propulsion. The ship drifted, the vast, swirling clouds of the nebula swallowing them, cloaking them in its chaotic embrace. Outside, Drakar's ships had entered the nebula, their sensors searching desperately for a sign of the Odyssey. The nebula distorted their vision, and they were flying blind. But Ethan knew it wouldn't last. The pirate warlord wouldn't give up so easily. As the Odyssey floated silently through the mist, Ethan felt a strange calm settle over him. But it didn't last long. A sudden crackle of static broke the silence. Commander, Mira's voice came through the comms. Their weapons are charging again. They're going to find us soon. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest. The gamble was working, but only for so long. Sylvara, he breathed. Can you get us out of this? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she closed her eyes, her face turning pale as she concentrated on the ship's vibrations. Her pulse quickened, the faint glow of her skin flickering like a star on the edge of implosion. Then, with a sharp inhale, she spoke. "We need to turn now." Ethan's hands flew over the control panel, steering the ship in her direction. The Odyssey banked hard, dodging a barrage of plasma bolts that exploded behind them, narrowly missing the tail. "Hold on," Riley yelled as the ship rocked. The lights flickered once, then stabilized. For a moment, it felt like the world outside had stopped, the tension building to a breaking point. Suddenly, the Iron Fang came into view, its massive silhouette emerging through the mist. It loomed over them, the massive guns charging. But before Drakar could fire, Sylvara's command came swiftly. Now, her fingers pressed the final sequence into the console. The Odyssey shot forward, a burst of speed as they tore through the nebula's red veil. The pirate ships were left in the dust, unable to track them through the dense fog. The Iron Fang fired into the emptiness, rage in Drakar's eyes. The Odyssey had escaped, but only just. Sylvara leaned back, her breath shaky as she exhaled. Ethan's heart beat in his throat as he looked at her, seeing her for what she truly was, a force that could lead them through the darkest moments. And somehow, despite the danger, he knew that their bond had deepened. But they were far from safe. The Odyssey hung in the dark embrace of the nebula, drifting in the wake of the pirates who had pursued them relentlessly. The ship was damaged but intact, its patched-together hull creaking with every shift. Inside, the crew was weary, but the relief of survival felt fragile, as if the calm before another storm could shatter at any moment. Ethan stood in the control room, staring at the swirling crimson mist outside, his mind still reeling from the escape. He could feel it in his bones. The pirates wouldn't give up. Drakar would come back. He always did. "Shields are holding at 40 Fintrum," Mira reported from engineering, her voice calm but tinged with concern. "We've got just enough to survive another hit. Maybe." Riley's voice cut through the tension. "We're sitting ducks in here, Commander. That nebula's not going to save us forever. We need to make a run for it." Ethan didn't reply immediately. His mind was elsewhere, his thoughts drawn to Sylvara. She stood beside him, focused on the console, her face an unreadable mask. The closeness between them, a bond that had only deepened during their shared flight through the nebula, was now tangible. But so were the stakes. If they couldn't escape Drakar, none of them would make it. "Can you get us out of this, Sylvara?" Ethan's voice was low, almost pleading. He knew it was a lot to ask, but in this moment, she was their only hope. Sylvara turned to him, her violet eyes glowing faintly. "I can," she said, her voice steady but thick with emotion. "But it will be risky. The nebula's interference is still strong. I need to synchronize with the ship's vibrations. If we do it wrong, we'll be sitting targets." Ethan nodded, his heart pounding. "Do it." Her hands flew over the console, fingers moved vying with precision, and the Odyssey's engines hummed in response. The ship seemed to pulse with life, as if it were listening to her. Ethan watched, a mix of awe and anxiety in his chest. Then, without warning, the ship lurched forward. The Iron Fang's silhouette emerged from the mist, its cannons glowing bright with deadly intent. "We don't have much time," Riley shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Hold on," Ethan yelled, gripping the edge of the console as the ship shot forward, narrowly avoiding a blast that sent the air around them. The ship shook violently as another round of plasma fire screamed past them, the hull groaning in protest. Sylvara's face was strained, sweat beading on her forehead as she guided them through the nebula's shifting pulse. "I can't keep this up much longer," she warned. Ethan's hands tightened into fists. This was it. If they didn't make it out now, they would be caught in Drakar's clutches. As the Iron Fang closed in, Ethan made a snap decision. "Cut the engines," he ordered, voice shaking. "Let's drift. We're going to outlast them." Sylvara's eyes widened, but she followed his command without hesitation. The Odyssey cut its engines, falling into the deadly silence of the nebula. For a split second, it felt like they had disappeared, the Iron Fang passing by in a blind, fruitless search. But then a sudden burst of fire from Drakar's ship exploded near the Odyssey, sending a shockwave through the hull. The crew braced for impact. The moment of truth had come. The blast hit with full force, but the Odyssey held. Sylvara's skillful maneuvering had allowed them to drift silently, barely a blip on Drakar's radar. They had survived, this time. But the battle was far from over. "Are we clear?" Ethan asked, his voice ragged. "For now," Sylvara replied, her eyes meeting his for the first time since the chaos began. Her gaze softened, just for a moment, before she turned back to the controls. The unspoken bond between them was undeniable. They had made it through the storm, but the next one was already on the horizon. The Odyssey drifted through the nebula, the remnants of the battle still lingering in the air like the aftershocks of an earthquake. The ship groaned, its hull battered but still intact. The flickering lights cast a dim glow across the control room, but there was no time for celebration. Every second that passed brought them closer to the next attack. Drakar wouldn't rest. Ethan stood at the helm, his hands resting lightly on the console, but his mind was elsewhere. He could still hear the thrum of the engines in the back of his mind, feel the pull of the ship's vibrations beneath his skin. But it was Sylvara who held his attention now. She stood a few feet away, her back straight, hands clasped in front of her as if bracing for the next storm. Her face was pale, her skin flickering in and out of that soft glow that always seemed to light the darkest corners of the room. The bond between them had deepened since the battle, but it wasn't just the physical proximity. It was the trust, the unspoken understanding. "You did it," Ethan said, his voice quieter than usual. "We made it out because of you." Sylvara didn't meet his eyes immediately. Instead, she stared out at the stars outside the observation window. "It's not over," she said softly. "We're not safe yet." Ethan's gaze lingered on her for a moment, the weight of her words sinking in. She's right. Drakar would come for them again. But the thought of losing her, of letting her go, felt impossible. This mission, this ship, none of it matters without her. Suddenly, the ship's comms crackled to life. Mira's voice broke through the silence. "Commander, we've got a problem. One of the engines is failing. The damage was worse than we thought. We can't keep going at this pace." Ethan's jaw clenched. Their ship was a patchwork of human ingenuity, but it had limits, and they had reached them. "How long before it fails completely?" 2 hours, maybe less," Mira replied, her voice tense but controlled. The reality of the situation hit hard. They had mere hours to fix what was broken, but the danger from Drakar was closing in. They needed to make repairs, but they also needed a plan. Sylvara stepped forward then, her voice low, but determined. "I can help. I can feel the energy flows, how the ship moves. I can assist in stabilizing the engine." Ethan turned to her, surprised. "You're willing to help?" he asked, his heart pounding. She met his gaze, the vulnerability in her eyes making his breath catch. "I can't just stand by and watch. We need each other." The words hung between them, thick with meaning. There was no turning back now. Their survival depended on more than just fixing the ship. It depended on what they were willing to share with each other. "All right," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Let's do this. Together." The tension in the control room was thick as Sylvara and Ethan worked in unison. The Odyssey hummed beneath them, its systems flickering like a dying star, struggling to hold together. Time was running out. The damage to the engine was more severe than they had anticipated, and the steady beat of the ship's failing pulse only served to remind them how close they were to total failure. Sylvara's fingers danced across the console, her movements precise but strained. Her eyes flicked back and forth between the diagnostics and the faint vibrations she could feel in the air. Ethan stood behind her, his presence like a constant pull, an anchor in the chaos. The strange, forbidden bond between them was undeniable now, palpable even in the most intense moments. "We're running out of time." Mira's voice came through the comms, the usual calmness in her tone gone. "If we don't stabilize the engine soon, we'll be stranded in the middle of nowhere. Ethan's gaze flickered to Sylvara. Her face was pale, sweat beading on her forehead as she concentrated. He wanted to reach out, to touch her, but the weight of their unspoken connection held him back. He had never felt this way before, not for anyone. Not after everything he'd lost. I can feel it, Sylvara said suddenly, her voice low and strained. The energy, it's fluctuating. I can sync the ship with the nebula's frequencies, but it will be risky. If we do it wrong, the ship will overload. Ethan's heart raced as he made his decision. We don't have a choice. Do it. I trust you. Her eyes met his then, a flicker of something deeper passing between them. Something that went beyond duty, beyond the mission. This is forbidden, Sylvara's voice whispered in his mind. But I can't deny what I feel. With a sharp intake of breath, Sylvara began the sequence. The Odyssey shuddered violently as the engine rumbled, struggling to stay alive. Ethan held his breath as the ship groaned under the pressure, the faint red glow of the nebula reflecting on their faces. And then, with one final pulse, the engine stabilized. The Odyssey held steady. We did it, Sylvara whispered, her voice trembling. She turned to him then, and for the first time, there were no walls between them. You're not just beautiful, Sylvara, Ethan said quietly, stepping closer. You're more than that. You're everything. Her lips parted, and for a heartbeat, the universe seemed to pause. Then, without a word, she closed the distance between them, her kiss soft, but full of a forbidden intensity that defied everything they had been taught. The galaxy, in all its vastness, suddenly felt small. They were no longer just two souls caught in a mission. They were something more, something that could never be undone. The Odyssey moved steadily through the vast darkness of space, its battered hull a testament to the crew's relentless drive to survive. The crimson haze of the nebula was a fading memory, the stars outside now a cold, indifferent backdrop. Inside the control room, the tension had not fully dissipated. The crew knew they had escaped Drakar, for now, but the uncertainty of what came next lingered like a shadow over them all. Ethan stood at the observation window, watching the stars drift by. His mind, once consumed by the mission and survival, now felt strangely quiet. The kiss he had shared with Sylvara, the raw intensity of the moment, still lingered in his chest. He knew they couldn't go back. There was no going back from what they had shared. Behind him, Sylvara stood, her presence filling the room. She had been quieter since the engine repairs, her eyes often distant, as if she were grappling with her own thoughts. Ethan turned to face her, the weight of their unspoken connection between them. I don't know what's next for us, Sylvara, Ethan said, his voice steady. But there was an underlying vulnerability. But I know I can't do this without you. Sylvara met his gaze, her eyes flickering with emotion. We're not just survivors, Ethan. We're something else, something more. The moment hung between them, charged with possibility. The future was uncertain, fraught with dangers. But for the first time since he had lost his first crew, Ethan felt like he wasn't alone. They had made it through the storm, together, and that was a new beginning.